All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and kind of get going and we'll give it one more minute. James, or do you want to start? We start.
We can go ahead and get started. I think it's already 32 after, so we're good.
All right. You want to kick this off, just kind of the intro a little bit?
Sure. So, welcome everybody. This is James Ray, Nichole Amundsen, and I run the Passive Cash Flow for Life learning platform. And then we also have obviously the meetups and then these teaching Tuesdays. Nichole has been teaching for about, I think it's almost been 12 years now. She used to teach a 4-day live class, which I took, and it was almost like getting fed with a fire hose. It was so much information. So a couple of years ago, we decided to actually take the course, rebuild it from the ground up, and actually produce it for online. So right now online, there's 36 modules. It's about probably 60 hours worth of materials. And there's, all sorts of documents and transcripts and audio files and all sorts of stuff. And it basically teaches you everything from the very beginning of setting your goals and finding your market all the way to the end to how to run your business and everything in between. There's a lot of detail on it. It takes people a little while to get through it, but you're probably going to be the most educated person in multifamily after you go through it. And a little background specifically on Nichole, because she actually teaches the course. She's been doing commercial real estate for almost 25 years. Started off in single family, and then like a lot of us graduated to multifamily, and now has thousands and thousands of units spread out across 11 states. And she doesn't manage any of the properties herself. She just manages the property manager. So makes for a very good lifestyle. So Nichole?
All right. Thank you. So, and that brings us to what we're going to talk about today. I have, in my early career, I bought a lot of small properties, small multifamilies, and I still have a lot of single family houses. We still buy some single family houses in a couple of markets. So, but because I'm scattered around, there's no way in the world that I could or even would try to manage these properties myself. And when I started buying, I was working for the government and I was gone a lot, traveled a lot. And so that made it even more that I needed to find ways to manage managers. And this is kind of a 30,000 foot look at one of the ways I manage. So a lot of it is through performance measures. So in my previous life, when I was working, I did a lot in the area of performance and quality. And I managed a lot of outpatient clinics, primary care clinics. I worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA. And so I was in charge of all of our primary care clinics. And so that was about 1,300 clinics around the country. And the only way you could get any kind of sense of what was happening is through measures. And so that's kind of was a natural transition into real estate. So what I want to hit bases on real quick is the areas where I typically try and set up some measures for the property managers and for each property. Now, I'm not saying that for every property I am measuring every one of these. If it's a small property like 20 units or less, we'll pick a few of these. But the idea is to be able to understand at a pretty quick glance the essentials of what's going on with the property. And so my typical measures are the net operating income. And but just to remind us, that's all the income from all sources minus the income, minus the expenses, all expenses with the exception of the mortgage and the interest on the mortgage. And it also subtracts out any bad debt, any vacant units, it's stuff like that. But that tells you that that measure is kind of the kind of a summary measure, for lack of a better thing, because it sort of takes in a lagging indicator way what's going on with the property. But if you only measure that, then you are typically, by the time it starts showing up as problems, you've got problems in other areas and don't necessarily know where they are. And that's where the other kinds of things are. So the other measures are that we have a budget and we look at how we're managing to the budget. We look at resident satisfaction. Work orders, are work orders completed in a timely manner. Preventive maintenance, so every unit is gone into at least every quarter or every 6 months to see that we make sure that we're keeping up the units. Occupancy, so we don't want to vacant or down units. Collections, turnover. I've talked to you before that turnover is your single biggest preventable expense. And so what do we do to try and keep our turnover down? And then the last area is we're always working on one or two things that we're trying to do to improve. So anything from we're going to paint certain apartments or change out light fixtures, or we're going to put in new mailboxes. So it's not always we're going to update our communication systems, our call systems, whatever it is. So some of the things that we're working on to improve. So those are generally the measures we're looking at. I want to mention this just in brief here, just in brief. This is Deming's iron triangle. And there's three areas where we need to keep an eye on measures on how things are going. One of them is cost. Cost can also be your income, your profit. Quality is, kind of how you're upkeeping units. It's the area of maintenance. It's the area of what are you doing to make sure that you're providing a safe, well-kept place for people to live. And the last area is access and satisfaction. So it depends on the business, but it can be either access, satisfaction, or both. But this really gets at your things that are facing your customers. So only thing I want to say about this is if you don't have measures, at least one measure in each of these areas, then you end up with something that's pretty uneven, and you can end up with problems and not even know about them. So one of our problems, I think, in our industry in general is that we have a tendency to focus only on profit. And I mean, we can't keep a property if we can't make a profit on it. But the problem is if you only focus on profit, and you don't spend some time keeping the units up, on managing or helping residents, the people who are paying for your mortgages, if you don't keep up the units, the quality of what you're offering, then you're going to lose residents. You're going to not be able to get the best prices you want. So for me, I'm always looking at making sure I have something that is measuring my performance in each of these three areas. And if you were to go back and look and just kind of go through these, you can see that that these measures fit in at least one of these areas. Okay, so one of the things when we're talking about measuring is that you have to have a way of figuring out how you're going to get to understand if you're getting better or not. And a lot of those come into numerator, denominator, numerator meaning if I'm talking about, let's just say, we are talking about, I don't want to do preventive, we're doing about work orders. So in this month or quarter, I have had 50 work orders come in. That's my denominator. That's the total number of work orders I have had come in. And my numerator is the number of work orders that were done in the time that I have said they should be done and in the quality. So that's my definition of terms. So let's say I had 45 of those done within the 48 hours of that I want them done in. Basically, that means that I have a 95% result. So I am looking to see how I am doing, and I can plot that on a graph. I can set my goals for those, my performance target, and I can determine if I am getting better or not. So the way I'm going to back up here for 2 minutes, and the way we typically run our properties is that we have these measures. Once a year, the property management company and probably the on-site manager and I, or every 2 years or whatever it is, are going to figure out what the measures are going to be for the coming year and what the goal is. So I also, so we give people bonuses, but the bonuses are based on hitting the performance targets. So rather than giving people a Christmas bonus per se, we give bonuses out every quarter based on hitting the performance targets. And I'm going to go through a little bit more, but for instance, the definition of terms, and I have an example here, like, so if we're looking to understand maintenance calls, then the numerator is the number of maintenance calls that are completed within 48 hours of being called in. That's the goal. Denominator is a total number of maintenance calls received, and we just talked about that. And then you plot them. And one of the things I have found to be consistently helpful across all of our properties is that at least once a quarter, you take and you print those graphs that show how you're doing, and you post them so that people can see how they're doing in relation to the goals, right? Okay, so the other thing is definition of terms. And we talked about that, but here's an example on this one. The numerator, 48 hours, begins when the client calls the problem in and ends when the maintenance crews report that the problem is fixed. So on-site manager, so we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt to begin with, that it was fixed within 48 hours. The on-site manager then, within 24 hours, contacts the resident and makes sure that the maintenance has been done to their satisfaction. Because I'm sure this is going to surprise some of you who've been in real estate so for a while, that maintenance people or other people sometimes come in and don't really fix things, or they come in and have to get a certain part, go back to the shop or do whatever, go buy a certain part, and they just don't get back, and yet they've reported that they have completed. So if you don't close that loop, it starts with the resident, it closes with the resident, as far as I'm concerned. If it hasn't been done to their satisfaction, it doesn't count. It gets taken off. All right. So, and here's our performance target. By the end of the year, 90% of maintenance calls will resolve to the satisfaction of the resident within 48 hours. Right? So that doesn't include the things that are, and so we have also are going to have exceptions in these definition of terms. So if they have to order a part that won't be in for 3 or 4 days, that one is an outlier and it doesn't get counted against them. And it doesn't get counted for them. It's just an outlier. All right. So if it's going to take more than 48 hours, I want noted in our rental software why, what had to be done, and then when it was actually fixed. Now, one of the things we do to make residents more satisfied, or try to, is to say to them, look at, this is something that we think is going to take, our goal is 48 hours, unless we have to order some kind of special part. And if it's not done within 72 hours, then you get that next day's rent free, those days rent free until it is completed. Because what we're really not wanting, one of the 2 or 3 things that you can control most often to stop people from moving is preventive maintenance. People move if they can't get things fixed in what they perceive to be a timely manner, right? And so we have fairly strict requirements for our residents in terms of what we want. And we think it's only fair that they have some expectations of us going the other way, to so that they know that they can expect us to perform at a certain level. And to me, it doesn't matter whether it is a really nice apartment or a blue collar property. People have a right to live in something that is safe and well maintained, and that they are treated with respect. And so that's, this is one measure that we have of that. Okay. So here is action example. I am not going to go over each of these. I don't need to, but here's an example. And if you go back to the within the next couple of days, this will this recording will be up on our YouTube channel, and you can look at this a little bit better. But here are actual measures for a property. This was several years ago. And I had a slide of it in another thing, so I just picked it up and pulled it over here. But if you were to go back and to look to see, are my measures over here, right? And then come back here, we have our net operating income. So that our net operating income after all expenses are paid, except the mortgage and the interest on the mortgage, is going to be $36,000 a month, right? We're going to do customer satisfactions and what that rating was. You can see here, it's a relatively low rating, but to get number one, when you're doing customer satisfaction, you can't force people to fill out a satisfaction survey, even though you try as much as you can. And there is a bias for people who are going to answer your satisfaction surveys towards people who have complaints. So it is rare that I see in properties satisfaction surveys that are more than 4.0, 4.2, something like that. We have occupancy goals. And so our end of September goal for this property, which was a yearly goal, was 185. And then we just built it out on a monthly basis. Now, what I want you to see here at the end of this one, there are 2 names associated with this. And I'm going to show you in another slide. Brittany was one of our, on this property, I believe, is one of the leasing agents. And Brad was the on-site manager. And so part of their bonuses were based on this measure. Now, not everybody is bonused on every measure, because like maintenance has got nothing to do with occupancy goals for the most part. And so what we do when we set these up is that we sort of assign responsibility for each measure to one or more staff. Now, if you have a small staff, you're not going to do this, obviously, or if you have just a property management company, this is not, this doesn't work so well. But you can still associate this with the property management company and what you expect those goals to be. So turnover. This property, as you can see, had a big problem with turnover. Although most apartments, this is actually a manufactured housing community, most properties have higher turnover than you think they would. And part of that, I think, is because we don't really focus on the satisfaction and managing the residents. And so it is not unusual to have properties with a 40 to 50% turnover annually. But that really is detrimental to your bottom line. It truly is. And so our average across my portfolio for people staying is between 2 and 3 years. I have some properties it's 5 and 6 years, right? So it is something you're always trying to work on, but you don't fix this, you don't decrease the turnover by only focusing on your net operating income, on income, and keeping expenses down. You decrease turnover by treating residents well, by managing their complaints, by good preventive maintenance. And it is worth it to you. So it is your single biggest controllable expense. A unit goes vacant, and it's probably on average a month to 6 weeks before you get it filled again. It's worth it to you. All right. Make ready. So when somebody does leave, how long does it take to get that unit turned? Now, I got to tell you, I don't know what it is in parts of the country, but here in the Baltimore, Washington area, people will tell you that the make readies are a week to 2 weeks. And I just cry foul on that. It shouldn't take you more than 48, 72 hours to get a unit turned unless somebody absolutely trashed it. All right. Work orders, preventive maintenance, curb appeal. So these were some of the things that we were looking at. Now, this slide, I want you to look at bonuses. Now, these are only some of the staff, right? So they're going to pay quarterly. So office staff was Brittany. Here she had 4 measures that she had some lead in. And her main one was $100 if she made this. So she could get $250 bonuses every quarter if she met these. Come over here, Michelle, her main job, her main bonus was for collections. But she's also supposed to be helping with occupancy, turnover, and residency. Okay, so maintenance staff, Cheo was the lead on vacancy and turns. They both vacancy and turns. Tony did most of the work orders. He did a lot of the grounds, as opposed to Cheo, who did less on work orders and more on grounds. So that just gives you kind of an idea. You can set this up however you want, but what's important is that your staff know what they're responsible for, what the measure is, and what they get bonused on, and then that you go and measure it and print it so that they can see how they are doing. And if they hit those bonuses, you make sure you get them paid, right? That which get measured, this is one of my favorite saying, that which gets measured does better. That which gets bonused does best. So if you want to have your property starting to go the way you want to, you need to know what you are trying to accomplish. Everybody needs to know, and you are going to attach some bonuses to that. All right. That was kind of it, what I really wanted to talk about with this. This is just kind of telling you a little bit more if you want to get some more information. And I'm just going to hit this really quickly here. we have about a 2-hour free webinar it's a passive wealth webinar that talks a little bit about, a lot of different things that you're welcome to go. If you have questions or just want to see what we have, what's up there, you can go to our website, Passive Cash Flow for Life. That's supposed to be for life. I can see I edited something there. So get that L out. Passive Cash Flow, FLOW, for life.com. If you have questions, email us at information or support. I think it's supposed to be support now. I keep trying to fix that. Support at Passive Cash Flow for Life. And here is the next one is the YouTube. That's where you're going to find these Teaching Tuesdays, the what we talked about posted. And there's a playlist of all of our Teaching Tuesdays. You can go in and look to see. And I think that's basically it. James, is there anything else you'd like to say? And we have some time for questions. And I do like it when people talk to me and ask questions. So we got anything there in the chat or any questions that people have, James?
No, not yet, but I did put, so everyone has it, you can cut and paste it, you don't have to copy it down. The link for the free webinar is at the top, and it's actually a clickable link. The website that tells you all about the program and stuff like that is Passive Cash Flow for Life. And then the email is support@passivecashflowforlife.com. We're going to change that info one of these days, but it's actually support. And in Nicole's defense, our first email address was info, and then we ended up canceling that one and changed it to support some time back. So that is the email, and those actually come to my desk. So anything you need, whether it be about this presentation or anything to do multifamily, we're more than happy to help in any way that we can. So if you have questions, you can just unmute. If you're shy, you can just type it into the chat, but and it can be obviously mostly about this topic that Nicole just covered, but everything's on the table. If you want to talk about anything else multifamily, please feel free to take advantage of the fact that Nicole's on here with all her experience, and she'll answer as best you can.
May I just speak up?
Yep.
Sure.
Hey, Nicole, I really enjoyed that presentation.
Thank you.
Coming from automotive and spending a lot of time in plants all over the world, I've got a lot of experience with different KPI.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you get into Six Sigma, but notwithstanding, I'm really impressed with this. Can I get a copy of one or two of these slides, or three of them, just to give me a taste of this? Are they on one of your websites, or?
James, I'm going to let you, but there isn't any reason you can't have these slides. There's
They're
there's
just
nothing there.
thought-provoking, it's great.
So
James,
all I would ask is if you just want to email me at that support at Passive Cash Flow for Life, or James at Passive Cash Flow for Life, and let me know you would like a copy of the slides, please do so.
Yeah,
I'll turn around and get it to you right away.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nothing in these Teaching Tuesdays is not shareable. So slides or whatever.
Okay, great. Well, as we unwind for what our current commercial properties are doing, I'm looking at multifamily. That's why.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so that's why I'm interested. So,
Sounds good. Well, thank you for joining us very much.
very much my pleasure.
All right. Other questions, comments?
I have a question, Nicole. This is Monty.
Hey, Monty.
Hey, so what do you think is the easiest way to find off-market deals for multifamily commercial real estate?
Right now, I think the easiest way to do that, frankly, is going back to old school. Go and figure out the market you're interested in and go buy a list and send out letters. Now, I would not sure I would do yellow letters because you are not talking. So typically in the residential, you're doing these handwritten letters to get people to open. If you're trying to get somebody to sell you a multifamily, it is really a business deal. And so your letters need to look a little bit better. I still think it is worthwhile using a handwritten envelope with a handwritten return address and a live stamp, because you get those tend to get opened rather than ended up in the circular file. The other thing is, if you know where you're interested in buying, take a drive and see if you find anything. The two other ways is that I would use is to talk to property management companies in the area to see if they know of anybody who might be wanting to sell. And the fourth, and maybe one of the most effective ways, is to find a local apartment owners association and join those and get to know some of those people. That's a longer term solution, but if you start to get to know those people, they know who's selling or who's wanting to sell, and they're more likely to try and sell to somebody they know than having to list it out there. So those are some of the ways I would focus on.
We actually have a student that has used all three of those ways. So his first property, which I think was 23 or 24 units, he was driving back and forth by it all the time and just decided to try and find out who the owner was. Second set, I think it's 12, 15, something like that in Baltimore. He got through a list. And then this third one, these are ones that I'm aware of. He probably has other stuff, but the third one that I'm aware of, actually he had called from a broker about another property and it didn't work for him. And he said, does this seller have anything else? And they're like, well, as a matter of fact, they have this other, set of units that they're looking to sell. So everything works. The whole idea, I think, is to actually do it, not just think about it. You have to take action. And it's proven it does work. You just have to take action and don't expect to get, I sent out 50 of these and 5 people are going to call me. You're going to have to send out quite a few and you're going to have to send them out repeatedly. I don't know what the latest, I guess, study says, but from what I understand, Nichole, you might know better, but it takes 5 to 6 to 7 touches before someone will actually call you. So you just have to stick with it.
Yeah, the numbers are probably going up, but the idea is, and so it doesn't mean seven letters. It means, that a letter, a text, a call, an email, some of those things. So you may actually end up having to, to do a little people search to try and find the owner and stuff like that. But yeah, it really is repeated touches. Now, a lot of people aren't selling. And the people who do want to sell right now, there's a lot of people who want more than what we should be paying for things, which is not atypical. So other people, is it Jean? John?
It's Gene, Nichole. Thank you so much. I actually have 2 questions, but the first one you mentioned, which I don't think is talked about enough, is how turnover can actually kill your cash flow.
Yeah, you want to talk about that a little bit more? Because it's something about hearing it from more than one voice helps a lot.
Yeah. Did you want me to talk? Oh, do you want?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
actually, no. I want you're the OG here. I just wanted to hear you expand on that more because, well, I guess my question along that same line is, what can one expect? Because you first acquire a property, you turn it over. I mean, or you raise the rents, but I think you didn't allude to, hey, it shouldn't take you more than 1 or 2 weeks to do a turnover, right?
That's right.
And then so how can we, I guess a lot of the underwriting stuff really don't take turnovers into consideration when you're doing the numbers. And how can we add that to our performance or our calculations?
Yeah, that one is tougher. So there's a lot to unpack on that one. So let me just kind of kind of start. I really don't do much underwriting related to turnover in a property, unless there is a lot of vacancy. So when I'm underwriting something, what I do is look to see, say I have a 40 unit. And when I get a current rent roll, not a current rent roll that has both all of the units occupied and unoccupied, and any kind of bad debt that's still there on a property. And that gives me some kind of a picture of what the turnover might look like. And I'm underscoring might. It has not been my experience that that is something that most people track, even though it has a lot to do with your cash flow. People don't seem to, for whatever reason, have keyed into that. So if I have, whether I have a vacancy or not, I'm always underwriting at a 10% vacancy, unless when I get that rent roll, it shows that I have a 20% vacancy, in which case that's what I'm going to use. And if I have a 20% vacancy, and when I'm talking vacancy, I'm not just talking physical vacancy, I'm also talking economic, meaning bad debt.
Okay.
That I know that I have got an issue with collections and or turnover, right? And that those are going to have to be some of my areas of focus for the first year or so with a property, to get it stabilized where I want it to be. I don't think it should take, and it almost never should it take 2 weeks for a turn. It's a week or less. Most of the time, I'm looking at 3 days, unless there's a problem. Now, because of that means if somebody has given me a move out time when they're going to move out, and I'm going to give them a move in, move out checklist, a move out checklist. If they want their deposit back, they have to have all of these things. So the move-in checklist is used to sort of make sure that people are, that all of these things on this list are in proper working order when somebody moves in. And the new resident is going to go through that and is going to check them off and make sure that they're all okay with them. And we're going to take some few pictures of what the place looked like when they moved in. The move out checklist is the same checklist. It's just the other side that hasn't been filled out. And if they want their deposit back, it has to be left in the same manner for the most part as when they moved in. Now that doesn't include painting walls and, you know, all of those kinds of things, but it does mean that it's in pretty good shape. And that's going to be done a couple of days before somebody moves out. So why am I telling you this? Because now I'm going to take that move out checklist and I'm going to sort of look to see what I have 2 or 3 days before they move out. And I'm going to hand that off to who's ever going to do my make ready, so they can get the schedules set up so people can come in and get that done. Typically 1 day is clean out. Another day is kind of patching walls and painting and doing things like that. The floor is getting the kind of anything you need to be fixed. And the third day is kind of just cleaning and getting things ready to move the nurse person in. We typically give people a week, but there isn't many things that should take more than a week. So what did I not cover in that list of questions you asked there, Jean?
No, that was great, because that actually gave me a whole new perspective on, like basically, like you said, if turnovers are like 40% and you add economic vacancy, you might be somewhere in like the 50%. Therefore, the only way to combat that is to have these turnovers happen quickly.
Well, and to provide people with a good place so they don't want to move. So one of my other strategic
Yeah,
kinds of
absolutely.
things is I typically focus my rents about 5% less than my competition.
Okay.
Because remember how expensive turnovers are.
Hmm.
So if I can be a little bit lower than the competition, then people have to be really unhappy before they're going to move, right?
Got it.
And if I can control that unhappy and make them pleasant, the place is pleasant and I'm treating them with respect, and we're doing those things, then your turnover falls quickly, right? So when you are taking over something, don't think about raising the rents to the top of the rents. It's going to be, I don't generally raise rents for 4 to 6 months because I want to see what I've got and I want to stabilize some things and have residents see that things are changing before you do something with those rents. Otherwise, they just tend to see you as a greedy landlord.
Love it. Love it. This is so deep OG key stuff, like, that most people don't cover. So yeah, I appreciate that. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, my last question is regarding the state of the economy for multifamily. You may have covered it before. I'm just getting back after a while. What do you see happening with rising interest rates, um, you know, um, interest-only loans for multifamilies coming due? I saw a lot of syndicators come in with very low cash flow. And my concern is I'm wondering these properties are going to be in a state of, because I'm hearing people are having to do creative financing now to get into these deals.
Yeah, people have always been doing creative financing, but so for a long time, people were buying these multifamilies at crazy cap rates, at unsustainable cap rates, 5% cap rate, 5.5% cap rate.
Yep.
That are just not sustainable. And right now in the commercial world, in the multifamily world, interest rates are, for good candidates, are 6.5 to 9. 7 is pretty typical. So, and if you get a good rate, like down 6.5, chances are it's going to, because with commercial, you have a balloon about every 3 to 5 to 7 years, and where you have to underwrite the whole thing again. And so the better the rate you get, the chances are the faster you're going to have to refinance, or you're going to have to re-up that loan. And I agree with you. I think there's a lot of people who bought at 4.5, 5, 6 cap rate, that when those loans have to be refinanced, people are going to be having to bring in hundreds of thousands of dollars for the lender to be willing to continue that loan. So I think that's an opportunity to find things to buy. I think that there are going to be an increased number of foreclosures, although banks generally don't like to foreclose on commercial. They may try and work to find somebody to buy it. And I think there's going to be some types of short sale opportunities. I think that rents, because everybody got real greedy and drove the rents way up, and I'm not sure those are sustainable. Because a lot of people just don't qualify for those new rents with what they make. And a lot of the COVID extra funding has gone away. You're already seeing vacancies, you're seeing concessions starting to show up in some markets. So I think it's going to be a rough, it's starting to get rough and it's going to get rougher. But I think by mid to late summer, you should start seeing how this is going to play out a little bit. Right now, there is a bunch of the big banks, a big, kind of JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, who have increased their their default predictions somewhere between 12 and 15% up, which is significant numbers. Or delay. The other thing I think you are seeing is that it's getting harder to find banks that will lend right now because they know everything is unstable. I think there's going to be a whole lot of opportunity to find some pretty good deals, but I think it's going to be another 6 months, 4 to 6 months before that really starts playing out a fair amount. And that's another reason why I wouldn't go in when I'm underwriting something with what a broker tells you the rents can be, because a lot of it is, I would back up and see what the rents were, 18 months ago and see how it pencils out with a modest increase in that, because I just don't think some of this is sustainable.
Awesome. That's so insightful. Thank you so much.
Okay. Other questions?
Actually, in the chat, Hitanshu wrote, and I think I understand what he's saying. Should you trade existing long-term tenancy, or I guess risk that because market rents are $150 less than they should be according to the market?
Okay, let me look at that question because I'm not sure. Should you trade existing long-term tenancy? Okay, I'm not quite sure. Are you trying to say that you want to raise rents $150 a door? Can you, okay. So it really depends. If I had good long-term stable tenants, there is no way I would raise their rents at one go that much because most of them can't afford it. So if you are $150 below market in some units and you want to raise rents after 6 months or so, raise them $50 for those people. And then in the next year, raise them another 50. So it'll take you 2 to 3 years maybe to get to that $150 if that $150 remains sustainable. But you won't lose good tenants, good residents, and keeping good residents is critical to long-term success in this business as far as I'm concerned. Did that answer your question? All right. Couple more questions from people.
If nobody has, I definitely want to circle back.
Okay.
Yeah, to your point on that too, just what you just told us about, hey, you want to adjust for rents 18 months ago, not what the broker's telling you. So, maybe raising rents $150 a pop might be like an overstatement, because that may not be what it really can support, right?
Yeah, more specifically, I'm trying to not have everybody move and then me try and have to re-tenant this at a market rent where it's harder and harder to get people to qualify.
Yep. And in terms of dollars, because I'm on the low side, I have 15 rentals. So in terms of dollars, like the amount it costs for me to turn a property over, when they leave, that's equivalent to 2 to 3 months of rents easy. So, why do I need to raise them so much when I, like you said, raise them $50 and see if they can handle it, right?
Yeah, I would say that, particularly if you're buying something new and you're coming in, the idea is you don't raise the rents up to where they could be for everybody at one go, because people just can't afford it. And we already have a massive problem in this country of lack of affordability and housing. And I personally don't want to make that worse for people. If I have good residents who are taking care of my property, and are helping me pay my mortgage off. You know, if I make, you know, $1,000 less a month in my pocket because of that, then over the long run, I'm going to put many, many more $1,000 in my pocket because I didn't take the quick, didn't step into the quick money, but had more of a long-term focus.
Yep, excellent. My last question, it looks like Lisa has a question for you, but I'm gonna just jump in real quick. So you laid out some great gems as to what's gonna happen in the market. You know, late summer. That's gonna tell us how can we position ourselves to take advantage of this.
Some of the things I would pick my markets for sure. I wouldn't be looking, and I've said this before, in the big cities. I would be looking for tertiary markets that are either rural or in kind of the third tier out, so the longer commute distances from cities. The prices are better. You have you can find smaller units that you may not have to have sponsors for. You get a couple of those under your belt, and brokers are going to start calling you. And so I would pick my markets, and I would see if I could find anything now. I mean, you get practice underwriting properties, just kind of looking at them and making offers, make offers. And if something comes your way at what you can afford to buy, then you're that much ahead of everybody, right? The other thing I would do is, if you're going to use other people's money, is to have a plan to start meeting with potential investors and building relationships, because it's really relationships that's going to get you the money to fund your property.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
And that actually segues real well into Leah's question that she has in the chat. Do you want me to read it, or can you see it?
Yeah, what are some ways to convince people to invest with you to get a multifamily building? And they said, okay, then changed their mind when I bought a deal. All right, well, happens to everybody. So my advice to people in terms of when you're raising money for this is, number one, it is a relationship game, and you have to really start building relationships. You need to be trying to provide people with education. So you get people on your list that you know, and you start talking to them, and you send them out information about what's going on, what that means, how you underwrite, how their money, you know, just show that you are interested and knowledgeable. And if you have to raise $1 million, get commitments for 3 million. Because even me, people go dark, people say, oh, I can't, things have changed. Now, I don't do much of that stuff anymore because I self-fund. But basically, this is part of the game. So you have to get way overcommitted in terms of money. And then you have to let people know that you have had that you have people who've committed, and the first come first serve will get the deal. But that one's a tough one. It's, people just disappear, they go dark, and it is, or they will tell you that they can't do it now, or they found something else. But so my answer to that is always raise 3 times what you think you need. For a newbie, would you recommend to always buy in your backyard, especially multifamily? Not necessarily. I don't think it hurts. Now, depends on where your backyard is, right? I don't think it hurts to buy in your backyard, but if your backyard happens to be Washington, D.C., or New York, or New Jersey, or Chicago, or Denver, or San Francisco, where the prices are incredibly high, then it's going to be very, very hard to find deals that work. And so I would find either go out to the third tier out, which is typically 50 or 60 miles from city center, where prices are more reasonable, or find a different market where you can find multifamily at a reasonable rate, and then spend a whole lot of time trying to find good property management in that area, who can manage your properties for you, and know that you're probably going to need to build, 100 to 250 units in that area to really get good property management rates. So you're North Carolina. Yeah, if you North Carolina is not too bad, I don't think. I'm not sure I would be in kind of the triangle, those kinds of things, unless you're out a ways. But there's some pretty good markets in North Carolina, I do believe, that are that you could still find some reasonable prices, and they aren't too far away from you. Okay, Charlene has a question. Open your mic, and we've got, I think, time for one or two more questions here. One more, last questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to our next presenter here just real quick.
Okay, Nichole, my question reverts back to the rent topic you were talking about, and if you had anything in your experience to say about dealing with programs, whether it's veterans or whether it's any sort of nonprofit programs that want to rent from you.
Are you talking about like Section 8, or are you talking about private?
Not Section 8, others, maybe veterans, maybe nonprofit in the city, or
yeah, I don't have any quarrel with those. I have a lot of those. So most of the VA rentals now are done through the HUD VASH program. So HUD manages it for the VA. But the nonprofits, I would be looking, I don't have any problems renting them, because they tend to underwrite the properties, and you get some guaranteed income. What I wouldn't do is put all of my eggs in that basket. So figure out how much, 20-30%. And I would also do a little bit of homework on how long that nonprofit's been in business, and how long how are they at paying their bills, by asking them who are some other people that they rent from, and then call those and call those landlords, those property management companies, and get a read on them. I think they can be helpful. I think that you have to do a little homework before you would step into that.
Okay.
All right.